Welcome to the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast.
Well, then Perez has got the better of it, and he looks to get the better of Schmeichel, and he's done it. Wilshere's going to fall here for Alexis Henry, chance, goal!
This is me, Lean, from arsenalvision.co.uk. After the nightmare that was Monaco, a clean sheet, 3 points, and a positive response was pretty much all we could have asked for against Everton, and we got just that. We weren't at our fluent attacking best, but you can expect that really, because the team would have been fully aware of the mistakes they made, and the priority must have been to not make them again. It's a good start, and work all over the pitch, and we done that, and I was pleased with that. The starting lineup was interesting. As I said in the match review today, I thought we might make a few more changes than we actually made. What we kept with the likes of Oliver Giroud, thank goodness, kept Ospina in goal, and kept Gibbs at the back, which may, in hindsight, have been to try and stop Lukaku from doing what he does against us, and that's pull to that side and use his pace and power to have a go at Monreal, which caused us problems in the past. So, yeah, 3 points, and we're now only 4 points behind City, with a run-in which is, you don't ever want to tempt fate, but a run-in that looks pretty decent on paper. It's nice to get back on the horse and to pick up the points. So it was a league debut for Gabriel at the back, and I thought it was quite interesting. I'm trying not to get too excited about him because it's really early and he hasn't been tested totally yet. What I've seen so far from him, I really like. He's aggressive, he's fast. Yeah, he's a quote unquote no nonsense defender. As I said, it's really early. He doesn't speak much English. It's going to take a while for him to develop a partnership with Koscielny, assuming that's going to be his partner, at least for the short term, if at all. Who knows? Per Mertesacker might be just rested for the game and come straight back into the team. We don't know how the manager thinks, so we'll see on that one. But yeah, I do like what I see of him. He obviously made a mistake in the first half. Could have been quite costly, and those are the margins right there. It wasn't punished, thank goodness, thanks to his keeper. But yeah, he improved as the game went on. He made a great tackle in the box on Lukaku. Excellent tackle that was. And he's really good in the air, and he looks like a good player. And I do like the fact we've got 2 fast centre-backs as well. So if we do decide to play a high line and try and play in the opponent's half, we have the pace to make sure that we don't get caught out. Especially if both Gibbs and Bellerin are playing fullback. Could be the fastest back four in the league, as well as the fastest attack. So, yes. Up next is QPR in the league, away from home on Wednesday. I don't know why. I don't like playing QPR away from home. There's been a few fixtures in the past where it's been quite tricky, but they no longer have the likes of Mark Hughes in charge anymore, so it might not be the same sort of game. I don't know. Maybe I'm worrying for the sake of worrying. But yeah, if we can beat QPR as well, that would be pretty good. Try and get some confidence into the players after what happened on Wednesday. That must have been quite damaging for them. The best way to improve your confidence is to play well and win games. So anyway, I'm going to hand you over to the guys. We're now joined with special guest, Gunnar in Barcelona, who's written a few pieces for Arsenal Vision in the past and has his own podcast called Little Bit Arsenal. So check that out after you listen to this one, of course. Anyway, I'm back for QPR. Enjoy the podcast and enjoy your week.
Welcome to the Arsenal Vision podcast. We're recording after the Everton game at the Emirates, 2-0 to the Arsenal. Thank you very much. With us today, our esteemed guest, John, who's Gunnar in Barcelona, at Gunnar_in_BCN, joining us to help out with the podcast today. Thank you very much, John.
Hola, amigos. ¿Cómo estamos esta tarde?
Sí. Anyway,
how are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Well, doing well.
I don't know what I just said yes to, but potentially the answer could change to no very quickly depending on how events progress. Anyway, adding to the conversation, we've got our reliable, old, or should I say young, contributor, James Seago, who's going to be helping us out here today, at Gunnar Fanatic 49. So that's our team for today. And James, you were at the game.
I was indeed. I was at the game on a beautiful sunny afternoon. It was
lovely, lovely. So it must have been a kind of a funny sort of nobody knows exactly how much to cheer or be nervous or to be annoyed or to be upset or to be supportive kind of a day. How was it at the on the way to and at the game, and how did it progress from a kind of emotions atmosphere standpoint?
I think you put it rather aptly. It was an interesting day. I actually arrived there significantly earlier than I normally do. I normally cut it rather fine, and I'm there just prior to kickoff when I do go. But I was there for a good sort of 20 minutes before the ball was kicked. So I was able to spend enough time to soak in the atmosphere and get a good feel for the match and the pre-match. Understandably, after a pretty shocking result on the Wednesday and a extremely demoralizing defeat, the atmosphere was a little cagey to begin with. It was a little quiet. I mean, it always is, to be honest with you, at the Emirates early on, unless it's a big game. It tends to take a few minutes before everyone finds their seats. But I think the atmosphere of the match very much reflected the opening 15 minutes of the game, which was an understandably very cagey, very nervy, very sort of feeling each other outy kind of affair. And in fact, I'm a little surprised that Everton didn't take more advantage of that early on, because we looked like a team that was just desperate to get through the first 15 minutes. And I think that was also represented in the type of atmosphere at the game, because it was a little murmury. It was pretty quiet, even relative to the sort of quietness it normally is, as I think you'd find most home stadiums are in the Premier League these days. What was interesting, actually, was, I forget what minute it was, but that Paulista tackle that I'm sure you all remember fondly on Lukaku really, got the crowd going. And that's actually what really kicked things off. And I actually think from that point on, the team started to play a little better going forward, but the crowd was actually surprisingly in pretty good voice. And I'm not sure if maybe the nerves settled a little and the performance picked up, and also the weather itself was quite nice. And I think I'm not sure exactly what it was down to, but surprisingly, I know there's been a lot of talk on Twitter that the atmosphere was quite dreary and quite disappointing, but actually, from that minute onwards, the crowd really picked up, and it became one of the better, I'd say, atmospheres that of a game that I've been to recently.
Interesting. So, John, talk us through your thoughts on the lineup pre-game.
Well, since earlier in the season, I've been kind of hesitant to be gung-ho supporting Mertesacker, because I thought that, after the World Cup and the end of last year, I thought that he had lost a step, anyway. So when I saw that Paulista was in, just briefly, when we signed Gabriel, for me, it was a situation where I thought he was very much like Koscielny, and I thought it would be a situation where we saw in the past with Vermaelen and Koscielny playing at the same time, where they were both very athletic, they were both very rash in their decision making. But Gabriel has impressed me with how quickly he's come to the forefront in saying with his play that he should be in the conversation for the starting lineup in every single match. Yeah, he's been when he's given a chance, he's performed. And I think that just having his athleticism there, I think his athleticism trumps Mertesacker's vision of the game, because whatever, Per decides he can do, but it happens at such a slow pace that he's not effective anymore, I don't think.
Yeah.
Or at this point in time, let's say, let's put it that way. But, Bellerin, depending how you want to say it, I love him at our right back. I think he offers us something that Chambers doesn't, as far as pace and his positioning is getting better. I was surprised that Gibbs started, to be honest. I thought Monreal would be at left back. Coughlin, Cazorla, Oates, and Sanchez, I expected to be there. I liked Oxlade-Chamberlain coming in because I thought he, despite, his misstep that led to that last goal against Monaco, his insertion into the game is really what brought any life to us on in the midweek. And Giroud needed to start to get that monkey off his back after all those misses. So when I saw the starting lineup, I was pleasantly surprised, and I thought the decisions of who was starting were accurate by the manager.
Interesting. James, any added reflections on the starting lineup? I mean, the Mertesacker one was clearly a big one.
It was a big one. And I wonder if Wenger still had in his mind the horrors of us going away to Everton last year and the way in which Lukaku terrorized our back line that time around. And so having two strong and quick players to somewhat mediate that might have been on the forefront of his mind when making that decision.
That's interesting, actually, James, because I'm not terribly tactical, but I do remember that game, and the big deal about it was kind of Lukaku drifting off to the right to kind of tug at our back line and create space and then swing back in again. And as you talk about that, none of that really happened yesterday.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing about having two defenders who, are like Koscielny and Gabriel, in that they're, both quick and strong, is that they're defenders that are a little more comfortable on any part of the pitch. Whereas, Mertesacker is extremely good in his, say, circumference in that right centre-back role, fairly deep, especially anything that comes in it aerially. But as soon as he gets dragged out wide, as soon as he gets pulled onto the halfway line when we're forced to play a high line, he's a lot more uneasy, just because of the lack of pace at his disposal. Whereas you have the ability for a Gabriel, for example, to be pulled out slightly, and then he has that recovery pace to get back in time. And I do wonder now, having had a Welbeck versus Walcott discussion on a previous pod, I wonder, maybe it's far too early to say, but is the writing on the wall for Theo? Because when you see that Welbeck gets dropped at right wing, and the second, or the battle between, for that place seems to be between Alex and Welbeck, let alone Theo, who seems to almost be a third choice right winger. And you have to seriously wonder how he's getting into that side. So it wasn't a surprising selection, although I'll be honest with you, I didn't think Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain had a particularly good game. But it does beg questions as to whether Theo has a place in the squad next season.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, two different views there on Ox. I guess I share both of the views, which is I think a lot of the energy and enterprise came from the Ox, but he was also kind of sloppy on the ball and some of the plays broke down. So he's a bit of a mixed bag. I wonder how much the manager felt it was important to get the Ox playing after his potential kind of mental trauma of, did he or didn't he cost us the Monaco leg. So I'm not saying that's why he was picked, but I'm sure a factor of it was getting him out there quickly, just as he did with Giroud, get him out playing again. I thought the other interesting selection was Ospina. That was one where I was thinking, if the manager is itching to put Chesney back in and to find a reason, he could find it from the Monaco game, and yet he decided to back his pick of Ospina and to double down on it and give him another game. It was a pretty interesting performance from him. John, in the last, recently, I think it was the last pod we did, I was talking about Ospina, and you remember the previous Colombian star goalkeeper, Higuita. Do you remember that guy?
Vaguely, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you might. So I'm looking for Higuita kind of tendencies to come out in Ospina. He's kind of a very, very restrained version of him, but still slightly crazy coming out of the box. What do you think of Ospina overall in the game?
I like Ospina. I thought it was harsh, the criticism that he received midweek, because I thought that defensively, both from our back four and our midfield, we were just all over the shop.
John, can I add quickly? I'm impressed by the goalkeeping talent that we have on Twitter, that they're so convinced they could have done better on that first deflected shot. The number of people who said, "Oh, just throw up an arm and you might have..." Jesus Christ, Kondogbia unloaded it and it got deflected and the poor guy was on his ass. He wasn't remotely close to getting near that shot. But anyway, that's just me piling into that conversation. I thought on the third goal, you can always get into that argument of, oh, if you can get a hand on it, you can do a little bit more with it. Maybe. But, and maybe his positioning, he maybe, if he'd stood his ground a little bit more, he could have narrowed the angle a little bit, but I do think it was awfully rough, and that was the third goal. So
his positioning is in his reflex really is what makes him the kind of goalkeeper he is. He's decent. Listen, nobody's going to come to the forefront and say, listen, he should be number one, and he's a clear-cut number one, because he's not. But Szczesny hasn't done anything either in his attempts and in his play to make him a rock solid number one either. So I think we're in a situation where you have to go with the player in form. And, like I said, I thought the criticism was harsh for midweek, regarding the deflection and whatnot. But if you see what he did this weekend, you can say, he kind of saved us. Sure. Gabriel was just, getting into the game, kind of, probably not the best way to start off, and gave that breakthrough to Lukaku, and Ospina came and kind of saved our ass there. And then, there was a couple of other shots and a couple of times when he came off his line and punched the ball away, where I thought, that's the commanding presence we needed. At that time. And we've seen Szczesny try to do it before and kind of, make a meal out of those situations. So I think it's kind of a toss-up right now, but I like Ospina. I think his reactions to plays are more effective at this point, and I think it's due to his experience.
Yeah. He definitely this game, he did some game-changing saves for sure. He bailed out Gabriel. There was the little tip over the bar. I don't know how much he got on it and whether the ball was going in without it, but it was certainly touch and go, and the kind of exciting save you see a Lloris making, and you're thinking, is Szczesny that quick? Is he that reactive? But I thought that was a really, really good save from Ospina and seemed to get enough on it. James, Gabriel, so interesting game from him. Could have all gone to hell in a handbasket really quickly. But it was fascinating to see him do something Mertesacker's never going to be able to do, which is bail Koscielny out with pace and speed and covering on that Lukaku moment. That was a really big deal. I think that was the moment you were talking about, kind of got the crowd into the game. What were your thoughts on... here's what I thought was really interesting. Gabriel was, after that performance, made the ESPN Team of the Week. We love to build him up before we destroy him. But anyway, and he's the only Arsenal player who did. That made me laugh. Ridiculous. But anyway.
Well, clearly whoever made that team just literally watched the highlights, of which one included that superb tackle, which was absolutely excellent, by the way.
It was beautiful.
It's pretty threatening watching a Lukaku bearing down on goal like that, and it's the absolute opposite of what you anticipate from a Mertesacker, who's quite, his long and lanky legs, and a lot of his game is built around his positioning and his anticipation. But Gabriel had a really interesting game. His first is much like the team itself, although probably even more so. His first 20 minutes were extremely cagey, extremely nervy, I felt. There were a couple of times early on where he won a couple of aerial duels, but literally headed the ball almost vertically upwards. He wasn't getting particularly clear contact with the ball. He was making very, very simple passes. There was that obviously discerning moment when there was a very, very rudimentary ball to deal with that he let bounce for no explicable reason in my eyes. It was a really, really simple ball. Lukaku was hardly challenging for it at the time. He could have just nodded it down or just headed it out. and he allowed Lukaku in on goal, which then led to Ospina's quite. From then on in, though, after he did make that tackle, and then he really grew into the game. He looked absolutely excellent, actually. That tackle really spurred him on. He made a couple of other excellent tackles. He was really good in the air. He was really commanding in his presence and the way he dealt with various challenges that were thrown at him. That being said, though, I think maybe midway through the second half, there was a time where he gave the ball away very needlessly, which forced Koscielny to make that challenge that got him a yellow card, which was extremely sloppy. And in fact, the Everton player was almost just clean through on goal, but fortunately the tackle was high enough up the pitch, and there were sort of covering fullbacks out quite wide, which meant it was never going to be a sending off. So it was, in some ways, it was a very strong commanding performance but there were other moments of sluggishness and I think probably nervousness. But I think that's completely to be expected of a player of his age who's just come into this league. Who whatever you think, if he doesn't speak the language that any of his teammates speak, that adds a whole nother bit of mental pressure onto his game. And I think you can see from that performance, especially from those little moments of brilliance, that he has a lot of the ingredients to be a very good centre-back, and certainly a very exciting centre-back to watch, and one that has that ability to recover like Koscielny. And you've got to believe that as those two build a partnership, because I imagine when Gabriel plays, will mostly be with Laurent alongside him. I think as those two build a partnership, that could prove to be a very interesting defensive line that possesses a significant amount of pace and is one that's going to be difficult to break down.
Yeah, interesting. I was thinking if we played Monreal instead of Gibbs, he would have had like 4 Spaniards around him. The only one not able to speak Spanish would have been Koscielny, though I actually, I was reading, they're saying that his Spanish isn't even that great. So the poor guy must have been, we were joking about when Wenger brought him on against Monaco, and the confusion you must have felt at being brought on as the third centre-back while they're taking off Alexis, and we got like 3 full-backs on the pitch. He must have been confused as bejesus as to what he was supposed to be doing. But anyway, yeah, I think any erratic behaviour in his performance is entirely understandable. I guess the question is, John, what do you think will happen going forward? Do you think this was a one-off, or do you think Per is going to get a really nice long chance to regain his calm? My bias, like you, I've been a long-time defender of Mertesacker. The only thing against my defence of Mertesacker is I don't think he's a very Arsenal centre-back, given how attacking we are, how often we like to play a high line, and how poor we can be sometimes in transitioning from all-out attack to, oh, Jesus Christ, they've got the ball and they're coming down the wings at us.
Well, Mertesacker is really a positional player. And, he, without the lack of that dominant defensive midfielder that we've needed for years, it kind of, like James said earlier, when you see him go to to the middle of the pitch and he gets caught out, it's just, the Keystone Cops moment. It's coming, and teams, I think, kind of plan around that. It let us attack, although we like to play. We're playing now more of a counterattacking a system. Teams love to let us have the ball, come up, kind of go into dead areas, rotate the ball back to our center backs, and it seems like they kind of rotate to attack to pressure, to get those center backs isolated. I just think that what Paulista is going to bring, Gabriel, is pace. James, stated that's going to be a pacey back four. If if Gibbs can get back to form, with Bellerin, even Debuchy is a pacey a fullback, and then you have Gabriel and Koscielny. Our missing piece of the puzzle. We can talk about center backs, we can talk about our finishing forwards as much as we'd like. Until we get that steal in the middle, I think that both our attacking midfield and our forwards and our defense are going to be, I guess, very separate. We need that transitional player that can bring a little bit of steel. Until we get that, I just think that we're kind of seeing, two parts. We have part A, we have part C, but we don't have part B to kind of link both of them together.
How's Coquelin been doing for you?
I like Coquelin. I always thought that he was going to end up as a fullback for us. If you remember, he played there a couple of times. And, the thing about Coquelin, what frustrates me about people saying, well, Coquelin's done great. Yeah, he has. He's done a commendable job. But let's not forget, last summer, or this summer, actually, he was supposed to be sold to Tours. And the only thing that was separating them from finishing that transaction was an agreement on wage, which I think they were like 5,000 euros a week off or something like that. So he was on his way out this summer. Where would we be right now if we didn't have Coquelin? And that's kind of worrying. How can we not be planning for those types of scenarios?
Yeah. From Coquelin's standpoint, it doesn't particularly bother me that he was about to be sold off, because you can say that of many famous players along the way. But I take your point in terms of our planning and our cover. Where would we be right now? Santi'd be our DM. He wouldn't, but he's next in line.
He played DM in Malaga a couple times.
Yeah. So no wonder we always go shopping there. They're as crazy as we are. So
no, but I think he's done a great job. I mean, given the situation.
Yeah.
But I think once Gabriel acclimates, once we either get a clear cut number one in goalkeeper, or we buy one or one of these guys steps up, and hopefully we'll address the defensive midfielder issue sooner rather than later. I think you have a young enough team, and you have a clear-cut talent that we haven't had in years, I think, in the squad. I think, everybody will benefit from everybody else's experience and talent, going from one to the other. You play around good players, you're going to become good, or you're going to be sold. It's that easy. I think that's what we've lacked for a lot of years.
Sure. So, James, what did you think of Ozil? There's another one that even in this game divided opinion. I saw some people who know their football saying he did nothing, produced nothing apart from one assist. And then you look at the stats and nobody ran more. And he basically had 2 assists. I don't know if you can call a corner assist, I guess, but it was a corner. But, when you look at his role in the build-up play, we may not have had the most startling game, but what we did do largely evolved from Ozil, I felt. What were your thoughts?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's funny, it was a very Ozil-y performance. When he did put his mark on the game, he made a very significant difference in that he was the contributor for both the goals. I think, you talked about the assist for the corner. I think that's an integral aspect to that game because that was the goal that really changed the dynamic and the context of the match itself, especially given how cagey the affair had been up until that point. But also, we've talked a lot in the past of we've had the ongoing joke of not being able to beat the first man, getting the ball in the right areas. But that seemed to be a pass where he was very much picking up the run of Giroud because there was that little bit of space there that wasn't occupied by any Everton defenses. So it was quite a low-ish dipping ball that basically hit his target pretty much perfectly, and which allowed Giroud to have the exact type of chance that he needed after his performance on Wednesday, one in which he didn't need to think. It was a very immediate reactive finish, and extremely well-taken goal at that. But outside of that, yes, he's sometimes a frustrating player to watch, mostly because of his languid body language. Also because naturally, as a player who occupies the kind of space that he does, he has great ball retention, don't get me wrong, but there are times where he gives the ball away trying to make that pass or trying to in tight spaces on the left, trying to flick it through a couple of defenders for those little quick one-touch interplays that we love trying to play off. He does go somewhat quiet during games, but I think that's just part of the way he plays. I wouldn't say it was, it wasn't a scintillating Ozil performance. I felt there was that moment where Alex played Ozil through, and he does possess a decent amount of pace, but you did feel if he just, and again, it's part of that body language of his. You did feel like if he was just upped it up from from the fourth gear to fifth gear, he would have been out of sight of that defender, and it wouldn't have taken the deflection that it did. But then again, that's the type of movement he makes, and even that was a chance made out of the types of spaces that we're able to occupy with through Alex and through Mesut. But that pass for that second goal is absolutely exquisite. That's as much a game changer as a sublime finish or a game changing, to a certain degree, goal as such. In that, when I was watching him with that ball on the left, and I remember this vividly, I was convinced he was going to play that little through ball just ahead of the first Everton player. I forget who was making the run, but for the life of me, I'd never even thought of that sort of laser-esque guided pass to the edge of the area, which then obviously took quite a lucky deflection. And that's what Mesut's in the team to do. It's that vision, and that in itself that can turn a game on its head. And I wouldn't say he had the most scintillating all-round performance, but he contributed to the two most important moments of the game in a very direct manner. And also, as you stated, as the stats show, I mean, he ran more than anyone on that pitch. I think he covered more ground than, I think he was the 8th highest player to have, or covered the 8th highest amount of ground of the Premier League teams that played that weekend, and occupy. I think he had like the 9th highest amount of sprints in the game. So he's number 10 to be constantly tracking back and making tackles. That's not the type of player he is. He covers a lot of ground going forward. He does have a strong work rate, and he does cover the spaces sometimes when our wide players come in centrally, or sometimes naturally a Santi Cazorla is going to occupy space a little higher than in that sort of Ramsey role, and he certainly does put in a shift to try and work hard for the team. I fear that it's mostly his body language and the way that he carries himself sometimes that they give people the wrong impression.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about that the second goal. A couple of thoughts come to the mind. There's this. I never liked that stat about goals that contribute to points, and that the first goal is so much more important to the second goal. I mean, there is a point to that because Giroud's goal did change the match, but Rositzky's goal, it gets 0 points contributed because we were always already ahead in the game state. Makes no sense to me, because how often is a game lost in the 90th to the 92nd minute and 2 points are lost at that point? To me, Rositzky is becoming what you call in baseball terms a closer coming out of the bullpen. He's coming in for the last 5 or 10 minutes. I'm just looking at a Vine right now, that Vine that was going around of him running like crazy across the pitch to make a tackle, I think on Barkley, and diving in and doing his... Nobody does the ninja sliding tackle better than Thomas Rositzky. But, what a treat that guy is overall. So, John, your thoughts on maybe Ozil, but Giroud and where he is in our season? He's gone from hero to zero and back to kind of a hero, I guess you could say, at the weekend. What are your thoughts on on Ozil, and then picking up with Giroud a little bit?
Well, Ozil, I think everybody that follows me on Twitter knows what I think of Ozil. Yeah. If you look, I'm not a big stats guy, but it has to be said. I mean, yesterday, like you guys stated, he ran the most of anybody on the pitch. He had 5 key passes, which was the most in the game, 91.5% pass accuracy, which was the highest in the game. He was dispossessed 4 times, but couldn't you kind of say, well, he was dispossessed trying to make plays?
Risk
in
reward.
Comparison.
Yeah.
Exactly. He had one accurate long ball. He had 5 accurate crosses, the 2 assists. I saw a tweet from somebody today who goes, yes, but it's kind of funny that both assists came passing backwards. I didn't know that was I didn't know that was a stat, passing backwards. So it's kind of, even though stats aren't everything, common sense just dictates that he didn't have a bad game like most people try to pretend he did. He also came out in the Who Scored Team of the Week as well. So, I think people miss about Ozil is that a lot of his gameplay is spacing, whether it be with a pass or with a run. One of the reasons that he always is, top 1 or 2 in our team for distance covered is because he not only creates space with his passing, he does it by runs that he makes, taking 1 or 2 defenders with him and creating space for the other players to come in. And I think he, with the style of gameplay that he has, he's never going to be a workhorse, as James said. He's not a defensive midfielder, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
As much as you would say, he's a world-class player, you expect him to take over a game. He's very much dependent on his forwards to finish the chances that he creates. And he's very much dependent on, the defense covering behind him. Yeah. So, if you look at another stat, and me saying I'm not a stat guy, but another one for you, to give you an example, we had an average of about 17% conversion rate in front of him last year. And this year included. For example, City with Aguero was around 26.5%. Just imagine how many more assists Ozil will have if the chances he actually creates were converted. How many times have you seen Giroud, Theo, or the like flop a shot that he can, when he does a perfect pass for a chance on goal? So just let's say a 3% tick up in conversion rate, and Ozil is getting, 2 or 3 more assists per year. Not only that, there was a tweet by Opta yesterday as well that Ozil's top 3 in the history of the Premiership in assists per minute. Number 1, Reyes. Number 2, Fabregas. We all know the people that they had in front of them and beside them to have those numbers. Who has Ozil have? Bentner, Sanogo, Giroud. So I think people need to put things in perspective a little bit, take a step back, and just enjoy the play. It's like, I tweeted today, it's like people have found out we were going to sign Ozil, never actually saw him play 90 minutes very often, went to YouTube, saw videos of highlights, and expect that for 90 minutes every match. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just, it's unrealistic.
Yeah. Hey, John, he ain't crazy like a fox. He's lazy like a fox.
Exactly. As far as Giroud's concerned, besides the goal that he scored on the corner, he did much of the same he did against Monaco. I just think that, he missed some chances that that header earlier on.
2 really good headers.
Mm-hmm, that, you would think that he would convert, and then he missed the one from Bellerin later on in the match. I just think it's a matter of, this is a team sport. You have players that depend on others on the pitch to make them shine. If everybody around you is playing well, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. If everybody around you is playing, shit, then what can you do? And I think, as a forward, that has a lot to do with it. He definitely needs to get his conversion rate up, but he's a very important player for us as far as link-up play and holding the ball up and, allowing our wide players to come into play, that sort of thing. Even though Giroud is not a world-class striker, he's the type of striker that helps us in the type of system that we're running now.
Yeah.
And as far as Ozil is concerned, haters are going to be haters. It just doesn't matter what he does. It's going to be, well, he doesn't do it in big games when he does it. Or it's going to be, well, he's shit. Well, guess what? Against Monaco, they were all shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. So speaking of sticking out like a sore thumb, what about Coquelin's nose? What do we think? Do we think he's going to play with a mask? Do we have any idea at this stage? And what are we going to do if we don't have Coquelin? How close is Flamini to a return? And what can we jam some horse placenta up bloody Coquelin's nose? Because I think we're about to realise just how much we like Coquelin if he's out. James, what are your thoughts?
Well, I saw him running through the tunnel, and there was a significant amount of blood pouring from his nose onto his, and I didn't look pretty. Although you've got to think in theory that one doesn't really need a nose to play football.
All right, Voldemort.
That's about, that's what we've got to hold on to, with Flamini seeming to have just disappeared off the face of the earth, and Arteta's literally hasn't been seen for months now.
Dead.
He's running sprints with Per during practice.
Does anyone have any idea when Mikel is planning on
April?
On return? April, perfect. I don't know. I don't know. You'd like to think that Coquelin's the type of character that is willing to play through a lot of pain. You hope they just sort of bandage that bad boy up. I'm no expert on broken noses or anything of the like, but you use your forehead to head the ball and your feet, and and hopefully his mental strength and mental capacity will sort of pull him over the hurdle of any pain that he's likely to encounter during a match. But he's the type of bulldog fighter that you like to think if anyone's on the team is going to be able to play through that, it's probably him.
I thought Arsene was pretty funny in the press conference. Somebody asked him about what Coquelin staying on and kind of was it medically wise and stuff, and Arsene was like, Coquelin has been out of the team for so long in his career, there was no getting him off that pitch today, so it was pretty funny. But the idea of Coquelin having a broken nose and then maybe going up against United, those bastards would be slapping him constantly in the face. Thank God he's not playing Costa. But what do you think, John, on the Coquelin's nose debate? I
think he'll play, but let's just say that he doesn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past Arsene to try maybe Chambers in that midfield role.
Yeah.
Just to give him a shot there, or who knows, maybe bring Rosicky in to play midfield with Cazorla. Or we could do what he did last year towards the end. I forgot which game that he did it, where Oxlade-Chamberlain played defensive midfield, if you remember that. So, I mean, we have options. None of them
just not
are
good ones.
optimal. They're not optimal, but or another name to throw out there. Could you see Monreal step in and play in that midfield? So he played center back. Why not throw him in defensive midfield?
I tell you who I could see playing at defensive midfielder. I think all that stuff about play Vermaelen as DM. I thought that was rubbish, but Koscielny, that boy could play that position.
Oh dear, no. I'll make a case for Mertesacker. I mean, him at defensive midfield, and I think we got a stalwart there for Old Trafford away.
James, we're supposed to have a defensive midfielder with pace. We're supposed to upgrade, not try to have a placeholder. No, I can't see that.
I say a positionally sound defensive midfielder of the Arteta moulding. Mertesacker with his exquisite passing and distribution in the centre of midfield. That I think that'll suit us to an absolute T.
Oh, dear God. Right, well, moving on quickly then. So we're like third in the table. We're 4 points behind Manchester City. We're something like 9 behind Chelsea. But we're only 1 ahead of United and 3 ahead of Liverpool. And after that, it becomes a little less credible. So, guys, we've gone from feeling pretty good about life to the absolute pits to not being really sure how upset we're supposed to be right now and maybe even a little intrigued. How are you guys feeling about where we're at in the season now? It's, as the saying goes, it's too early to say. Anybody think there's any life in this Champions League Monaco tie? How do you feel about the trip to United for the FA Cup. How are you feeling about the league? John?
I'm confident about the FA Cup. Although I think that we can beat Monaco, obviously. The chances were there even when we were playing badly. We have to convert those chances. They're really stingy defense, obviously, so it's going to be a task. Is it impossible? No. Is it likely? Of course not. United, just given on form, I think that we should feel confident going in there. But it's United, so anything can and probably will happen. But I am confident that we'll get a result. As far as the league, I think that we have the easiest run-in from the top four that are that is currently the top four. So I could see us catching City, and they've been sputtering of late. So you don't think about it, but if we hadn't had that horrible start where we were just giving up points here and there, who knows where we'd be right now? It could be a completely different season. So, there's definitely things to look up. Things are looking up, and there's certainly things to look forward to. So I'm not pleased, but I'm not going to, start throwing, liquor bottles at the screen at any time soon. That's for sure.
James, your thoughts on where we're at in the grander scheme of things?
I haven't been surprised by the way in which February's played out in the league. I think I'd been saying for a while that there'd be a slight upturn in at least results. Performances haven't necessarily matched it on a consistent basis, but I think we're looking in pretty good shape for the league at the moment, for third place at least. It's going to be tight. There's certainly no guarantees, especially in this league. Liverpool are starting to look very good. United have been getting points despite playing poorly. So you do fear that, if Rooney playing up top starts working out for them, whether they might go on a little run. But I'm pretty confident, as I have been for a little while, about us securing that third place. The problem I have is third place by itself is not good enough for me, for this team, and for the squad that we have. We can talk about the poor start to the season all we want, but that's no excuse for the cup competitions that we're involved in. I mentioned on the last pod, the Old Trafford fixture now has even more importance placed upon it than it did prior to that Monaco game, because look, if we're being realistic, it's highly unlikely that we're going to get the result that we require in Monaco. Sure, we can dream. I think I'm just going to leave that to one side and just I'll maybe bear a moment's thought towards it about a second before kickoff. But until then, I'm effectively going to assume that we're out the Champions League. So we really need to get this monkey off our back against United. And I'm never confident going to Old Trafford, no matter the form. Last season, we had as good an opportunity as we've had in a long time and may ever have, with a really poor Moyes side, and we still lost. We cannot afford to lose at Old Trafford. We just cannot really get knocked out in the FA Cup against United. At least take it back to the Emirates. I assume that it's a replay would be in store if we were to draw after 90 minutes. So yeah, I mean, a lot of our season now, whether we view it as a success or a failure, if we can even assume that we come third, which even that might be, some people certainly say that might even be a slight stretch. But if we assume that for a moment, but if we get knocked out at Old Trafford and we end up losing in Monaco, it's going to be, the pitchforks are probably going to be out, to be honest with you, from various sections of the fan base. And I can't say I fully blame them, but the one promising thing is if we push forward and we do get third, I mean, that's going to come off the back of a fairly steady run from early January-ish until the end of the season. That's a fairly promising sign for our hopes of challenging for the league next year, especially given the strength of squad that we have. And if we're being honest anyway, cup competitions do have a little bit of luck involved. It's all about, it's all about what happens on the day. It's not necessarily representative of the actual quality of the squad itself, but yes, of course, it has a strong bearing on the quality of the season from a fan's point of view. So I don't know. I think so much is going to hinge on that Monday game, and I'm absolutely bricking it for it.
I like it. I think, as you said, I could see we draw at Old Trafford and come back to the Emirates and win a little more easily than us winning at Old Trafford, even though I agree with all we've got to, we must, they're vulnerable. I don't know, they're also united and they're jammy, lucky, and I got a really hard time seeing us winning that one. I don't care what anybody says about this season and these teams. I think we're going to struggle there, just as we always do, and I'm looking forward to being wrong. But let's take our mind out of our problems for a little bit. John, how are things going in Spain? You obviously got the hook up there and follow that league closely. Maybe we don't care too much about who's in 14th and 15th place, but, let's dream a little. We survive Monaco somehow. It will then become relevant how Atletico Madrid, if they survive, and Barca and Real Madrid are doing. And just generally, give us a little sunshine there from the Spanish league.
Well, I'm going to concentrate on the top four. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Valencia. That's how we stand at the moment. Madrid up top with 61 points, then followed by Barcelona, 59. Atletico Madrid kind of dropping off a bit from last year, 54 points, and Valencia, 53. Last night, Villarreal and Real Madrid drew with Ronaldo scoring his 30th league goal, and that great defense of Real Madrid giving up the win in the shortly thereafter. You hear this talk about how Madrid are just, with that front line that they have, are just impossible to beat, but you see that defense, they just can't get it together. So, I don't know. It's a tight race. Right after them is Barcelona, the Clásico, which is going to make El Clásico, the next Clásico, a huge game. They won 3-1 against Granada. Messi scoring his 27th league goal, I believe. And Rakitic and Suarez each scoring. Suarez's 5th league goal of the year, both Rakitic and Suarez with an assist. Then you had Sevilla and Atletico Madrid playing to a 0-0 draw with, I believe, 8 or 9 yellow cards. Wow. So it was a feisty affair, as any Diego Simeone team would, are likely to give you. But for me, really, the big news this week, and I have a friend that works for Real Madrid, kind of emailed me and said to be on the lookout for them to be out after Pogba this summer. So if you didn't think that they could get any better with that midfielder, that front line, they're going to make a concerted effort to sign Pogba in the summer. And locally here in Barcelona, we have rumors that they're looking to sell Neymar, with the stink that he brought with him in that deal. That first was 20 million, then was 40 million, then it turned out to be about a little bit over 100 million euros. and all the legal maneuvering that's happening right now, that they're trying to distance themselves away from that, and that they really don't need him now that they have Suarez. And they do have a wealth of young talent that's just sitting there. Delafau is on loan. Just talent. The talent base there obviously is enormous. So they might be looking to unload him in the summer, and with PSG, one of the main clubs that are interested. And that's what we have going on over here.
Interesting. I saw a report, not that I read too much on the La Liga. I always want to follow it a lot closer than I actually do. But do you know this Carlos Rexach guy, who pronouncing that horribly, who's part of their inside political structure at Barcelona, ripping on Messi, Luis Enrique, Johan Cruyff, even has a go at Deulofeu, or however that's pronounced. Have you heard of that guy?
Yeah, well, yeah, the relationships here in this Barcelona hierarchy is very incestuous.
Yeah.
The former president was one of Laporta's chief. Rosell was one of Laporta's chief guys during his administration. Then Laporta left, and to run for political office, among other things. Rosell got into the hot water that he did. There was on my blog there was a huge thing about the political stuff going on when in Pep Guardiola's last year. So everything here is politically motivated.
Yeah.
For somebody that wants to run for president, or somebody campaigning on behalf of whoever wants to run that they're close to.
Sure.
So, you always got to take those reports with a grain of salt, because what they're trying to do is just, position themselves for the upcoming election.
Sure. Well, just before I take them with a grain of salt, let me give you the highlights. On Messi, he says, I think last season he ate more pizzas than he should have done or was necessary. I like his phrasing of that. Than he should have done or was necessary. On Luis Enrique, he has started with too many rules. Whoever doesn't train doesn't play. Let's see you apply that rule to Messi. Then he has a go at Johan Cruyff. He's not missing anybody here. He has a go on the relationship with Guardiola and Villanova. I'll skip that. He has a go at Victor Valdez's departure from the club. On Deulofeu, or however that's pronounced, he is good, but maybe he believes a little too much good. On Roberto, he says, he plays, but you don't notice him. It's like he doesn't want to get stuck in, and now the same has started to happen with Rakitic. What a great club.
he's covering all the bases, isn't he? No, but there is, a small section of the Barcelona aficionados that do think that there's something in that Messi felt a bit disrespected by them having to bring in, Neymar and, his entourage, because really what you're looking at is not the player themselves, it's the entourage that they bring with them.
Yeah.
The people that they let into the dressing room after the matches, or into the, to the private parties and that sort of thing. For example, Laporta was in Castro de Fels meeting with one of Messi's best friends. There's rumors that, Laporta might be coming back to make a run at the presidency again. So, yeah, it's just very much a who you're siding with. And, just the fact that there's even talk that Messi might move on will tell you the discord that's, they're flush with discord, that club. So we'll see what happens.
Well, anyway, apologies for wanting to peddle and deal in the misery and challenges and just the general gossip of other clubs, but it'll take our minds off our own problems a little bit. So, fixtures coming up. We got Queen's Park Rangers, Wednesday, 4th of March. Cool. That's in like a day or two's time. So, that's away. And we got Manchester United, Monday, 9th of March. God help us. And that's away. So, interesting couple of games coming up. We've talked about the United game. I take it we're pretty optimistic about our short trip across London to Queen's Park Rangers. Have you been to that stadium much, James?
No, I've never been.
Okay.
And I unfortunately won't be able to attend on Wednesday, so...
Darn it. I say, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. Away games in the Premier League are always difficult. QPR have a decent home record. They've really struggled away from home this season, but they've picked up some good results at home, so it's not going to be an easy tie. But it's a game that you'd have to think if we bring our A game, so to speak, then we're heavy favourites to bring back the 3 points, and however we get them, 3 points is what we need on Wednesday.
Interesting. So, John, in terms of who starts in that game, anything particularly interesting? Obviously, we had a few interesting selections this time with Gabriel, with Gibbs, with Ospina, Walcott not making the pitch, Oxlade starting. What are your thoughts in terms of what you'll be looking for in selection for the QPR game?
Yeah, I'm kind of conflicted because if there was ever a time that you would take a match that we ought to win, even with our second choice players, whether it be, by choice or by form, it would be this one to prepare for the United away in the FA Cup. But then, aren't these the type of games that we do that and then all of a sudden we end up drawing or losing? And we just can't afford that with this fixture this year. So, you would love to see Sanchez and an Old Soul and a Cazorla get a rest, but I don't know that we can afford that right now. So, I don't know. I just have a gut feeling that he's going to rest some players. And even though obviously it's like James alluded to, it's going to be a tough match anyway, because I just think that, every team gets up for us now. They know they can pressure us into making mistakes and whatnot. I don't know. It's going to be a tough match. And if we rest our key players that need a rest right now, it's going to be even tougher. So I'm cautiously optimistic of being adequate enough to get a result.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's getting to a really interesting point of the season now, in the sense that there's only 11 league games left. We could have just one more game in the Champions League, and touch wood, we could have one or more games in the FA Cup, but we could be down to our last 13 games, and we've got a lot of players coming back into fitness. There's going to be a lot of people looking to get on the pitch over the next few weeks to have an impact on our season while there's still a season to impact. It's amazing how quickly we're kind of hitting the finishing line here. But with that, let's wrap the puppy in bacon here and pop it in the oven and wrap up our little pod here. So I'd really like to thank John for coming on today and contributing overall, and in particular for sprinkling a little La Liga over our conversations to give it a nice continental twist here. Thank you very much, John.
I appreciate it, guys, and it was a pleasure.
And John is at Gooner_in_BCN for obvious reasons at this point. And I'd like to thank James, as always, for contributing and sprinkling a little match day fever on our conversations. Well, maybe not fever, but maybe a slightly raised temperature. So, James, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Of course. Pleasure to be on, as always, Paul. And James, pleasure chatting with the both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And James is at GoonerFanatic49. So that's it, everybody. Thank you very much. Come on, Arsenal, and UTA.